Welcome to Motivational Humanity. You are not alone. The moment you stopped obeying them, they stopped loving you. Not slowly, not gradually, almost instantly. And somewhere deep inside, if you are honest with yourself, you already knew that. You just didn't want it to be true, because accepting that truth would mean admitting something painful. That the love you believed in may have been conditional all along. Today, we are going to talk about something many women experience, but few have the language to describe. Why some people love you deeply until the moment you stop being useful to them. And once you see this pattern clearly, you will never again question your worth because someone else withdrew their affection. There is a moment that many people can remember with unsettling clarity. One day, they were your greatest supporter. They called you strong. They said you were beautiful. They told everyone how much you meant to them. They admired your kindness. They celebrated your generosity. And you believed them. Because why wouldn't you? Love, after all, is supposed to feel safe. But then something shifted. Maybe it was a boundary you finally set. Maybe it was the first time you said no without apologizing. Maybe it was the moment you stopped over explaining yourself or stopped fixing problems that were never yours to fix. And suddenly the warmth disappeared. The same person who once celebrated you now seemed irritated by your presence. The admiration turned into criticism. The kindness turned into distance. And the most confusing part was this: you could not understand what you had done wrong. If that story lives somewhere in your memory, stay with me. Because what happened to you was not about your value. It was about their fear. Before we go deeper, I want you to pause for just a moment, take one slow breath in, and let it go. This moment is not about analyzing them. This moment is about understanding yourself. This is your space, your sanctuary. No one enters here without your permission. The healing we do today is not dramatic. It doesn't look like shouting or confrontation. It looks like a woman sitting quietly and finally understanding what she lived through. You have likely been generous, patient, compassionate. You gave people the benefit of the doubt. Sometimes, for years, you explained their behavior to yourself in ways that protected them. They're stressed. They didn't mean it that way. They've been through a lot. And because your heart was kind, you kept trying, but eventually something inside you shifted. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was clarity. Or maybe it was the quiet realization that you were giving far more than you were receiving. And when that shift happened, the response you received may have been devastating. Not because you had done anything wrong, but because some people are not truly in relationship with you. They are in relationship with what you provide. And the moment that provision stops, the mask comes down. There is a term for this kind of connection. It is called a situational friendship. A situational friend is someone whose care for you depends not on who you are, but on what role you play in their life. They may show up beautifully during certain seasons, during a divorce, during illness, during loss. They appear supportive, attentive, generous. But often something subtle is happening beneath the surface. Your pain gives them a role. Your struggle allows them to feel needed. Your vulnerability places them in the position of helper. And while that may look like love, it is sometimes something else entirely. Because the moment your season changes, the relationship begins to change as well. Maybe you recover, maybe you grow stronger, maybe you become less dependent. Maybe you simply begin to say no, and suddenly their energy shifts, they fade, or worse, they turn against you. Situational friendship is not always malicious. Often it simply reflects an underdeveloped ability to form genuine intimacy. Some people never learned how to love someone simply for who they are. Their early relationships were transactional. Love was given when expectations were met. Affection was conditional. So unconsciously, they recreate that same pattern in adulthood. They do not know how to remain connected when the conditions change. And that limitation is their wound, not your worth. I want you to think of someone right now. Someone who once made you feel deeply seen and then didn't. Hold them gently in your mind, not with bitterness, but with understanding, because what you are learning today will help you stop trying to make sense of their behavior through the lens of healthy love. And that realization alone can be incredibly freeing. Now we enter deeper terrain. There is a pattern that psychologists have documented for decades. A pattern many people live inside of for years without ever having a name for it. And when you finally hear the name, something shifts because clarity removes confusion. Some people operate with strong narcissistic patterns. This does not mean they're evil, but it does mean their emotional world is structured very differently from yours. A person with narcissistic patterns cannot regulate their sense of worth internally. They rely heavily on external validation, admiration, control, attention, deference. Even your pain can sometimes become a source of validation because it proves they have influence over your emotional world. When you are compliant, when you give them what they want, the relationship may feel almost normal, even warm. But here is the turning point. The moment you stop providing that validation, their internal world goes into crisis, and their response to that crisis follows a pattern. Stage 1, disbelief. When you first begin pulling away, they often don't believe it. They assume your independence is temporary. Suddenly, they become charming again. They remember your birthday. They send thoughtful messages. They appear attentive. This stage is sometimes called the hoovering phase, like a vacuum attempting to pull you back in. And the compassionate part of you wants to believe the change is real. But wisdom asks a different question. Not, what are they doing right now? But what have they done consistently across time? Consistency reveals truth. Stage 2, rage. Rage does not always look like yelling. Sometimes it appears as cold silence. Sometimes it appears as passive aggression. Sometimes it appears as gossip. Suddenly people around you start hearing strange stories about who you are. This is called a smear campaign. The goal is simple. If they cannot control you, they attempt to control how others see you. And the most painful part is often watching people you trusted believe a distorted version of your story. But remember this, a storm can surround a lighthouse. The storm is loud. but the lighthouse still stands. Stage 3 devaluation. The same person who once praised you suddenly begins to minimize you. They may imply you were never that special. They may rewrite history. They may frame your boundaries as cruelty, but devaluation is not the discovery of your true worth. It is a defense mechanism, because if you are still remarkable and you chose to live without them, their fragile self-image cannot survive that reality. So they attempt to make you smaller, not because you are small, but because your independence threatens them. Let me pause here and ask you something. Is there a woman in your life right now who is experiencing exactly this? A sister, a friend, a daughter, someone confused about why a relationship that once felt loving has suddenly become painful. If someone came to your mind, consider sending this message to her. Not because views matter, but because sometimes the right words arrive at exactly the right moment in someone's healing. Now we come to the turning point. Because everything we have discussed so far might sound like a story of betrayal, but there is another way to see it. In Japanese culture, there is an art form called kintsugi. When pottery breaks, the pieces are repaired using gold. The cracks are not hidden. They are highlighted because the philosophy behind kintsugi says something extraordinary. The break does not ruin the object. The break becomes the most beautiful part of it. Women who have survived manipulation often carry something similar, a luminous seam, a place where the breaking happened. And the gold that fills that seam is clarity. The women who emerge stronger from betrayal share a quiet turning point. It is rarely the moment the other person apologizes, because often that apology never comes. Instead, it is the moment they stop trying to understand the betrayer and begin understanding themselves. Why did I stay so long? What did I hope would change? What did I believe about my own worth? These questions are not about blame. They are about discovery, because many women were raised with a deeply ingrained belief that love must be earned through endless giving. Be helpful, be patient, be accommodating, keep the peace, shrink your needs. And as long as you continue giving, you will be loved. But that belief makes you vulnerable to people who see generosity as a resource to consume. And the moment you realize that your worth is not dependent on usefulness, everything begins to change. You were not betrayed because you trusted too much. You were betrayed because you were taught that love must be earned. Healing begins the moment you realize something radical. You deserve love simply for existing. A boundary is not a wall. A boundary is not punishment. A boundary is a declaration of identity. It is the quiet understanding that there is a line between your life and someone else's expectations. And when that line is crossed, you gently but firmly restore it. When you begin setting real boundaries, resistance is almost guaranteed. People who benefited from your lack of boundaries may call you selfish. They may say you've changed, and they are right. You have changed, and that change is growth. The woman who holds boundaries is not the same woman who once carried everyone else's emotional weight. She has learned something essential. Peace purchased through self-abandonment is not peace. It is disappearance. And you are not disappearing anymore. Before we close, we must speak about grief, because growth often includes loss. The loss of relationships you invested years into, the loss of the version of people you believed in, that grief deserves compassion. You are allowed to mourn what you thought was real. You are allowed to feel sadness. But eventually, another invitation appears. Forgiveness. Not forgiveness for them. Forgiveness for yourself. Forgiveness is not reconciliation. It is not restoring trust. It is not pretending nothing happened. Forgiveness is releasing yourself from the exhausting hope that someone will become who they were never capable of being. It is the moment you step out of the emotional prison their behavior created and finally walk into open air. And if there is one truth I want you to carry with you after today, it is this: you were never too much. You were simply offering your depth in rooms that could not appreciate it. The love you gave was not wasted. It shaped you, strengthened you, deepened your compassion. But from this moment forward, you do not have to earn your place in anyone's life. You do not have to shrink to protect someone else's ego. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to walk away from what diminishes you. And you are allowed to protect your peace without apology, because the truth is something beautiful. You were never the problem. You were always the pearl